Today, on Mike and Mono, we're going to talk about wood boilers. Hey there, welcome back. I hate these things. I got to take a quick moment to let you know that Capri Suns are probably one of the worst things in the world. It's a running joke with my family. So much to the point where my Netflix avatar is hashtag I hate Capri Suns. Primarily it's because of this. I find 9 million of those. Someone had it in their hand when they opened the dang thing. Somehow it ends up on the floor. And if I'm barefooted, sure as the world, I'm going to step on one of these. And I got to take and peel the sticky Capri Sun straw wrapper thing off of me. Do your part. Don't buy Capri Suns. They're terrible for you. That's all I had to drink. We had to mow some grass here. We were in a drought, and then we just got a whole bunch of rain, so I needed to really mow the grass. But welcome back. So we're glad that everyone's here. Today we're going to talk about wood boilers. Wood boilers, I'm really into. This is going to be a two-part video series, I think. So the first part will be just the general discussion about wood boilers, kind of some of the different iterations of them that you may see out there, and then I'm going to do a little walk around of and show you mine and my general setup. The next part, the next video that I want to make in this series will be more of actually the piping arrangement, how I've got it piped in, the pumping system, some of the controls that I've got in there. But wood boilers, you may have one, you may know someone who's had one. They're really popular in rural areas, like where I am. They're maybe not so popular in an urban environment. Typically, we're talking about some kind of a vessel that's got a firebox. You build a fire, the fire burns, and it's surrounded by a water jacket. So a lot of what you'll see around here are, in my mind, the kind of old school smoke dragons. You know, big 4-foot doors. You could put pallets. You could put a Volkswagen in them. You know, anywhere from 300 to 800 gallons of water. That basically, when the water temperature drops below a certain amount, the aquastat will close, bring on a blower, and blow combustion air into the boiler, burns until it cycles up on temperature and off. And you have pumps or a pump, depending on your situation, that will be moving that hot water out of that jacket that's on the wood boiler to a structure, house, garage, house and a garage. Now, my boiler is a little different. It's actually an indoor boiler. I've got it in my storage shed, and so it's an indoor / outdoor boiler. And it's a European wood boiler. It came from Europe. Had it shipped over here. In Europe, they do a lot of biomass heating. Very, very popular there. It's a good heating system, but it is a low mass boiler. What do I mean when I say low mass? I mean the water volume in the boiler is very small. From an efficiency point of view, it takes it's more efficient to heat a very small volume of water versus a big giant volume of water, at least water that is enveloped around a burning chamber of wood, peat, coal, whatever biomass, corn husks, straw. You can just about burn anything depending on how dry it is. So mine is a low mass boiler. Total, I think it's like 20 gallons of water in it total. So from an efficiency point of view, it's more efficient to do it that way. Now, with that being said, there's a few more things you got to contend with the setup and making sure you don't overshoot. If your controls are such that it's just an on-off on an aquastat with a big, 5 to 10 degree deadband, if you don't have a big mass of water to absorb the heat, sometimes you can run into high temperature situations. With my boiler, the controls are set up a little different, and maybe a little different than what you're looking at, in a normal, just outdoor wood boiler that you would see. It kind of looks like a doghouse with just a smokestack coming out of it with the big door. Those work. They work great. They were all over the place where I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina. Very popular. They work. Over time, efficiency has came into play, and how do we get efficient? You have gasification boilers now that are pretty much just burning the smoke that comes out of the combustion process. Very high tech oxygen sensors, primary, secondary air mixing. Those are very expensive. Do they work? Absolutely. Are they very efficient? Absolutely. Are they very expensive? Absolutely. When I went to finally pull the trigger on buying one for my house where we live now, I did a lot of research and I landed on this company out of Europe, but I just couldn't afford the really nice gasifying wood boilers that are available, regardless of the manufacturer. They make good machines; they're just very expensive. And it goes without saying that in order to capitalize on those really high efficiencies, the wood's got to be dry. Can't joke around with that. Can't burn unseasoned wood. You'll just start having issues. But I'm going to do a little walk around, kind of show you my system a little bit. I'm going to try to get to where all the pumps are and some of the valving and piping and just a snapshot of some of the controls. So let's do it. All right. I apologize about the light in here. It's got some fluorescent lights. It's not the greatest, so this may not show super great. But yeah, here it is. This is the Uni-15, UNI-15. It's made by a company called Hydronics. They're out of Belarus, so I did get this before all of the Ukraine stuff was going on. But yeah, so basically you have a burn chamber here, and I'm going to bring you a close-up view here in just a little bit. Burn chamber. That's where you would load your firewood. This is a clean out where it comes up. The flue gases go up in and around a couple of tubes and passages, comes up and in here. This is all surrounded by water. In the very bottom, which you won't see in this camera angle, is your ash and your ash clean out. Your controls are here. Basically the outlet, water's pumping out this way, turns, that's 1 inch, goes down. Off of the 1 inch, I have a 1/2 inch line here, that's going to a 24 volt. Actually, that's 120 volt actuator. So whenever power is applied, it closes. Whenever you remove power, it opens. That goes up, it climbs up, goes over into this coil assembly here. I had to make some sheet metal stuff around it. It's got a fan on the back. And actually, I will try to get you a better look at that. Supply water, obviously, gauge, safety relief. Also, I should say, this is a pressurized system. This is a closed loop system. This is not an open system. A lot of your wood boilers you'll see with the big tanks outside um, that I was talking about earlier, they're open systems. Even a lot of the gassers or gasification wood boilers, they're open systems. So this runs under pressure. So there's some safety considerations to put in place. You got to be very careful when it comes to that. This is a pressurized system. So there's reasons why we do that or why I did that versus why some people chose not to do it. Insurance purposes, that does come into play sometimes. But this is not in my house. This is outside, away from my structure where I live. I did want to make that comment. But so we have pressure relief valve there that just goes down to below this building. It penetrates the floor and goes out. No valves here. You can't have any valves in between the boiler or pressure vessel and your safety relief. That's a air vent here. Once it's bled, it typically is fine. But yeah, so it comes out, the supply comes out, goes down that way, underground. There's two pipes going to the house and back. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But there is a circuit here. So this actuator here, and that's a chainsaw file in the background. Let's see if we can focus here. It's normally open. It's powered closed. That's I put 120 on that. It's going to close. There's a reason for that. But that goes up. All right, the tripod is now in my way. Goes up into this coil. And it goes through the coil and out. There's a side glass that's way up there. But that height, that elevation is actually higher than the highest point of my system for a reason. So I do have an air vent up there as well that I can use. Oh goodness. That I can use to get air out of it. Comes out here, goes down, and it ultimately marries with the main return. Again, I'll show you that later. So the firebox. Sorry, we are in between burns, so there's some cleaning I need to do. But this is approximately 14, 15 inches wide, 15, 16 inches deep, and I normally load it to about 2.5 feet. The grates that I was talking about are down there. Yeah, it has some passages here where water is moving around to help capitalize on heat exchange surface area. Down here, that would be your clean out. Okay. So the controls of the boiler itself, obviously you have your temperature of the water, the set point. These are your min maxes. This is set up to integrate right to a domestic water storage. If this was in your house, you could directly tie into this boiler for domestic hot water. I use heat exchangers in my house to heat my hot water off of this, so I don't use that. That's why that's grayed out. And flue gas temperatures, so it does analyze flue gas temperatures. Over here we've got some stuff. This doesn't talk to me remotely. I got one of these Inkbird. It's actually a thermostat. It can turn on a heating and cooling appliance, a 120. I don't use it for that. I just have the thermometer probe in one of the water wells that just to give me a readout. And basically, if the temperature gets too high, it will send me a message. I can connect to it via Wi-Fi or internet wherever I am. If the water gets too hot, it'll let me know. If it gets too cold, it'll let me know. Um, so what do we have here? Let me see the best way to explain this. Uh, this is a UPS. That's uninterrupted power supply. It's basically a battery. So I supply 120 to this off of my house, and it passes through normal everything like that. In essence, we got a couple of relays, rib relays. This is another temperature controller. Um, this is heat for my building. So if I have this set to want to keep the building at 70 or 65, whatever, that will bring on the blower up here. But this is all tied together so that if the water's not hot enough, because one of the issues is this is European power. So in the United States, we do 120 volts to neutral or bonded neutral ground. We do 220 hot to hot. So your air conditioner in your home, that's 220 volts, and that would be from one phase to the other phase, so A to B phase. In Europe, they do 220 volts hot to neutral. So I had to get a transformer, and that is that guy. I had to get that to convert 120 to the 220 hot to neutral, like for European, because this is what this runs off of. But basically, this is monitoring normal power. So in the event that, let's say, the power goes out, right? Power goes out. We've had an ice storm. Power goes out. That relay is going to drop out, and when that drops out, this UPS is going to be losing power because it's seeing the same ultimately 120 that this relay is seeing, and when that 120 goes away, the UPS kicks in and makes 120. So what happens is at that point, because there's going to be a fire in here at that point, and fire just doesn't want to shut off. It's a low mass boiler, and I don't want this thing to overheat. So this is now a dump zone up here. So basically, when 120 goes, this is dead. There's no 120 going into the transformer, thus no line voltage to control this unit. So this will go blank. It'll go dead. But when I lose power, that gets back to that guy being powered closed. As soon as 120 goes away, that the spring will open that, and that will open a dump zone. So basically, it'll thermosiphon up. Hot water will rise, come over, and fall just like that. And it'll do that on its own. Thermosiphon dump zones have been around a long time. I do have the pump, the circulating pump, which I'll show you soon. That's about 85, 90 watts. So basically, that is tied too. So regardless of what anything's wanting to happen, if I lose power to this building, that pump is going to come on. It's going to be powered by that UPS, and that valve is going to open. So at least, and I've timed it. The UPS it'll run it for probably 45 minutes, and that's typically long enough to get the heat out of this mass. And the way the dampers work in the back of this, the boiler will choke the fire out on its own because it will be totally denied combustion air. But that keeps that water moving in the event that I have a power outage. So that's really just, it's a safety circuit. And then this right here is an additional safety that if the water gets too hot, right, this has its own circuit where it's going to it'll lock out the blower. Okay, I'm not going to let it get any hotter. But if it gets that hot or hotter, this is actually going to bring on this heating unit here, this unit heater, which is going to open that valve. It's going to dump the heat. So if this gets an over temp situation, this is going to bring on this heat, and it's just going to dump the heat here in the house. So extra safeties that I wanted to put in, just additional safeties beyond what this is. I will show you back here. There's the blower. It's a variable speed blower. It's got a barometric damper in it, so as the speed speeds up or slows down, that will open. Flue gas data is collected right there. But yeah, it's completely variable speed, and it works great. So I'm going to show you some of the other stuff in the system. So this is where the primary circuit pump is. And this hasn't been opened in a while. So we got some critters. That's always good. You guys see that? It's nothing fancy. Circulating pump. That extra stuff you see on the bottom is just valving that is normally closed that you can use to check your pump flow on your pump curve. Basically, you need a way to measure the head, the net static head. So you need the discharge pressure. So basically, I would open that first valve, close the back one while the pump's running, note the pressure. I would close that valve and open the back valve, note the pressure. So if it was, I'm just throwing numbers out, 30 and 20, basically the static head on it would be 10. And you can use the pump curve from the manufacturer. Every manufacturer that makes a pump, they have pump curves for all their pumps. So you can test and calibrate your flows, see what you're actually moving. There's a 60-watt light bulb in there. I don't know if you can see here. That little guy, that's a refrigerant bulb, and that's going to, it's basically like an aquastat in a sense, where if it gets cold, closes a switch, turns on that 120-volt light. Now, that's just to keep it warm in there in the event that the fire goes out and the boiler is no longer producing heat. Eventually, this pump's going to shut off, and when that happens, you got water just sitting in a pipe that will ultimately start freezing and bust. So if the pump ever goes off and the water gets cold, that light will turn it on, and that'll keep that box. It is insulated. It'll keep it 40 degrees down to probably 5 degrees Fahrenheit, which is way colder than we'll ever see here. All right, we are up under my house. Excuse the mess. I told my kids to clean it up down here, but no one is listening. All right, so what do we have? This is our main controller made out of just some sheet metal, and there's a 120 volt switch. That's a disconnect. Basically, I have two thermostats. This one is a pump on, pump off. This one is a high-low limit. There's an outlet under here. One says valve and one says pump. So that outlet is broken and separated. So both sides are not hot at the same time. I've got some low voltage wiring there. We'll talk about that in the next video. Ultimately, outside the boiler, it'll get to temperature, and once it gets warm enough, it'll bring on its own pump, and that'll start moving water around the primary circuit, and that will come up under the house here. This thermostat here, once it gets so warm, it will turn on the secondary pump. So I have a primary secondary system. So there's the secondary pump. This is for build out over here. So we got some kind of future stuff you can kind of see there. So the supply is coming in up top, coming this way. This is a low loss header. That is open. That decouples, that separates the primary loop ultimately is coming up that pipe around down like that. So that's the loop right there. This is the secondary loop, is pulling from this side here around, going to some T's, valves. There are other components here: strainers, expansion tank, check valves, a few of those things. I can talk more about that. This is another one of those actuators. When it loses power, it opens. So that line goes to a heating coil that's in the return plenum of the house, and that's the return line. That line there in the back, that's the supply that goes over to water heater with a sidearm heat exchanger. Basically, same thing here. This is just a gauge array so that you can open, verify pressure, close, open, verify suction pressure, get ahead, pump curve, look up and see what that pump is moving. Basically, how this works is this thermostat, when the water gets hot enough to a preset amount, it's gonna bring on the pump. That's all this one's gonna do. When it gets so cold, it's gonna shut the pump off. I am heating my domestic hot water with this system. So if this water gets really cold, although my heat could run off of 130-degree water, I don't want to run the water that low once it gets that cold, because I'll actually start taking heat out of my domestic hot water tank. So once the water gets so cold, this turns that off. So all water circulation on this side of the system stops. And if that's happening, that means the boiler has ran out of fuel, and it's going to be time to reload. This is a high-low limit. I have, like I said, I'm heating my domestic water. So in the event that my domestic water, let's say someone's taking a shower, so it's heating the water. That heat exchanger is going to take a lot of heat out of the boiler water. So the return water temperature coming back from that loop is going to start getting cold. If the house heat is running at the same time, the water returning back to the boiler will get very cold. And what is very cold? It all depends, but typically I don't want to return colder than 140. If the return water in a boiler that's active burning a fuel, the fuel gases, if the water that's in that heat exchanger of the boiler gets below 140, typically you probably get a little bit lower, 135, maybe 132. It depends on the conditions, but a safe number is 140. Once you start getting below that number, you will actually start to condense acid out of the flue gas. So the inside of your boiler can just get rusted out. So you one of the big things with boilers, wood-fired boilers especially, but they're all prone to this, by the way. You want to maintain the lowest return water temperature that you can get, but not too low. because if it gets too low, you're going to start destroying metal in the boiler. So this is basically, if that water temperature gets that low, that's happening because the heat's on and someone's taking a shower at the same time. So what happens if the water hits that low limit? It actually closes the house heat valve. Now I have a heat pump system. It works great. Um, so if this condition happens where it's someone's taking a shower and the heat's on at the same time, that return water temperature is just going to start bottoming out. So it will actually close off the heat, hot water. The blower in the house will keep moving air. The thermostat's going to think it's doing so good, I'm giving you heat, but it's really not, because I'm going to temporarily be denying uh, hot water going to that heat exchanger. And that will last just until probably the shower stops, and all of a sudden that water will immediately, that return temperature, as soon as that heat exchanger stops heating the domestic water, that return water temperature will shoot right back up. That will come back into normal range, and it will open that actuator if the call for heat is still present. Also, now there's a high limit in here. If the water gets hot, we're worried about heat because we've got PEX pipe. I mean, it's great pipe, but it can only handle certain temperatures. The boiler loop outside has its own safeties to try to control that temperature and modulate down as best as it can. But in the event that something sticks, let's say the damper sticks, or someone left the door open, I left it open, and all of a sudden I forgot to close the ash clean out door, and it's just got so much combustion air, it's going to run wild and it's going to get hot. This water is going to get hot. That pump's going to stay on out there because we need that water to move to get out of that boiler. But if it gets so hot here, this is going to bring on the heat in the house, and you're going to know, because the house, the candles will be dripping off of the walls and the mantle. It's going to be hot. You can pour a glass of peanut butter. So that's what that is. That's to turn on the heat in the event that the water gets too hot, and just dump heat into the house. It'll get your attention. Or if the water gets too cold, okay, someone's taking a shower and the heat's running. That's to protect the boiler, to control the return water temperature. This is just to tell the pump, turn on, your water's hot enough to actually do something with, or turn off, your water's not hot enough to do something with. So that's the skinny on that. We are inside. This is return grill. These filters are awesome, by the way. If you're ever looking for a good filter bias, where you can get them. This is a 20 by 25 filter normally, but that's normally only 1 inch nominal here. But this steps it out to like 4 inches, and it goes inside a regular filter grill. Those are awesome. Look them up, filterbuy.com. All right, so this is a return plenum, and there's a hot water coil here. You can see the red line there. Hot water comes in. This is a 2-circuit coil here. So it's 2 rows, it's dual rows. So that water goes through like that, comes out here. So we braze that in to this 3/4 pipe. There's an air vent. These are automatic air vents, but I have seen them leak over time. The little float in there doesn't seal. So once you bleed the air out, you should be good, unless you start leaking. But the air comes in here, return air, goes down and gets heated and comes out the vents all hot. So we will close this back up. All right, let's take a second to talk about thermostat. The way I have the control set up is it uses just a regular thermostat. You know, some people you'll see they'll have 2 thermostats. One's for wood boiler heat, and the other thermostat is for whatever other heating system they got. So if it's propane or heat pump or natural gas or oil, whatever. A lot of people have 2 thermostats. This thermostat is set up for a heat pump. All I'm doing is under the house basically is if the water is hot, if it's hot enough, I'm basically intercepting the call for the heat pump. So heat pumps, it basically tells two things to turn on. It tells the blower, that's the thing that moves the air, it tells the blower to come on, and it tells the compressor and outdoor unit to come on. So what I'm doing is if that water's hot, I'm intercepting that outdoor heat pump call. I allow the blower call to carry on, and I'm just basically denying that from happening. So this thermostat doesn't know where the heat's coming from. It just needs heat, turns heat on, and I'm just choosing what to turn on based off of the water temperature. If the water's good and hot, I'm going to run heat off the boiler. If the water is not hot, the call is going to carry on to the heat pump, and that's fairly simple. This is an Ecobee. I think this is an Ecobee 3. It's a great thermostat, fairly cheap. I mean, it's got a lot of connectivity. You can get a lot of reports and data usage, and you may not need that. I like that kind of stuff. It helps me kind of justify what I'm doing energy wise. But there's a thermostat, nothing fancy, just a Ecobee 3 that I'm intercepting signals other places to just not allow it to run the heat pump if the water's hot. Because why would you do that? You got a fire and the water's hot. All right. Well, that about concludes this episode of Walk Around and Get Spider Bit. We hope you guys enjoyed that. So you got a chance to see in general my boiler setup, kind of what it looks like. I'm going to do another video at some point that's going to go over kind of the piping arrangement that will hopefully lay out exactly where water is moving, when it's moving, and why it's doing that, and future build out of any add-ons that I want to do on the system. But thank you again for coming back, sticking around with us. We've enjoyed it, and we're going to do it again. Just remember, if it ain't broke, it ain't ours. Just come back now. You still here? I don't know if they're here. There. Hey, if you're still here, please leave us a comment. Let us know what we need to do different. Let us know if there's something else y'all would like to see. We'll do our best to try to help make content that you care about. But that's the only reason we're doing this, is to just share with people that are like-minded. But you be good. Thank you.